This week's LessWrong to post. Let's get into those. Affective death spirals is the first one. I don't know how we want to do these. Should I just read the first thing? Or
Yeah,
do you guys have
real
notes?
quick. Affective death spirals are the things where it's funny because he gives you the example of online debates as they were in the fun old days of 15 years ago.
Yeah.
So much fun.
Now it's
oh, now it's been taken to such a hyper extreme. I wish the entire world had read these posts and applied them, and instead they did the exact opposite.
Yeah.
Which we might get into after this.
We have spiraled all the way.
Yeah.
I'm trying to think of the one-sentence summary of a affective death spiral. It's the super positive, happy thing that, the super cool thing that you're really into, and it turns out it has positive application in literally every part of your life, basically.
I think so.
Which, if that sounds absurd, that's because it is.
Yes.
But it's only when you spell it out that it becomes absurd.
Yes.
It doesn't feel that way from the inside.
Yeah. He says that because we just talked about the halo effect recently, I believe. And yeah, he points out that the halo effect is the thing where positive characteristics enhance perception of every other positive characteristic. But doesn't that sound a lot like how fissioning uranium atoms sends out neutrons that fission other uranium atoms? Where it
Kind of.
Yeah. It kind of just spirals and builds and has a critical mass thingy. And that could be very bad. And I believe that's pretty much the whole post, that if a positive thing like that makes every other positive thing look good, and then they look better, so they make all the other ones look better, and so forth. That could be a problem.
Is there a way that this isn't just the opposite of a vicious cycle?
No, this is. I mean, some people would call it a virtuous cycle. Maybe it's actually a vicious cycle, depending on your point of view. Because usually virtuous cycles are cycles that build into something good, and I think this still builds into something bad, even if it's based on a good feeling.
Yeah, it just seems like maybe the choice of the word happiness or positivity is a little off, because what I'm thinking of is kind of bubbles people get themselves in when, say, they belong to the Republican Party and they only watch Fox News, and their Facebook friends are all in that same bubble, and they only read Wall Street Journal.
But I think he uses the term happy because it's like, this thing, this ideology of ours is the best thing ever and is great, and the world should be made better by it.
Well, he says the cycle of credulity and confirmation, which sounds more accurate, because I mean, you've seen the same thing happen with outrage porn being a thing that creates these kind of death spirals, because it just keeps pushing your buttons and sucking you back in deeper and deeper and shoving you further into an ideology.
Yeah.
I think he's specifically here talking about happy death spirals, but there are other kinds of affective death spirals. Yeah. And so, he's admonishing here about, this isn't outrage, this isn't partisanship.
It could be outrage. The key is that it makes you feel good to believe it. And ideologies often make you feel good to believe them.
Sure, again, maybe not good, but maybe you feel like you're connected to your culture or your group, or that you have righteous anger.
I was about to say, moral righteousness is one of the best feelings there is. And I say this as someone who had a lot of it in the past, and fuck me, still does. Fine.
And that is a pretty fearsome thing if, you consider the things that people can justify.
Yep.
It's a different kind of positive feeling, though, than, oh man, this new thing I discovered, Bayesian rationality is the solution to all of my problems and more, right?
Yeah.
So I think that this is him setting the groundwork for, this isn't a cult, I swear, right?
Well, part of it, yeah. Yes, it does later on tie into that. I think this is part of his, here's things to watch out for if it's a cult. And I don't think he ever says this isn't a cult, I swear, but he says, don't do this thing or you'll turn into a cult. And I don't want that, and no, neither does anyone else. So I think this was very good idea of him to do beforehand, and is one of the things that stopped the rationality thing from becoming a cult, because he was like, look, guys, if you feel too happy about rationality and think it's the best thing in the world and everything about it just makes everything else seem cooler, take a second look, because you might be getting into cult territory. And, it's really fucking great when someone starts out their cult by saying, don't be cult-like, that sucks. And then we don't have one.
Yeah.
Cool.
Mm-hmm.
So, resist the happy death spiral. Literally what we were just talking about. How can you resist this happy death spiral?
Cut up your great thingy into smaller independent thingies and then treat them as independent thingies.
That's basically it. And it's great. He gives the example of a Marxist would cut up Marx's great thingy into a theory of value of labor, a theory of political relations between classes, a theory of wages, a theory on the ultimate political state of mankind. And then each of these should be assessed independently, and the truth or falsity of one should not halo on the others. If we can do that, we should be safe from the spiral, as each theory is too narrow to start a spiral on its own.
Yeah, this reminds me of the other sequence, or I forget if this was a sequence or just something on LessWrong, but the idea of keeping your identity small, where that was kind of my solution too, where I was like, my preference was to keep my identity, but like, what do I want to say? Large, but like varied. Like, I'm not tied into this cluster or like this one thing. So you have.
Yeah, it was a Paul Graham post. Actually,
Was it?
Yeah, we should do a whole episode on some of his best stuff because holy shit, he writes some really good things.
Yeah. Anything else about spirals? How you do avoid a happy death spiral? You split it into parts. You treat every additional detail as burdensome. You think about the specifics of the causal chain instead of the good or bad feelings. You don't rehearse the evidence, and you don't add happiness from claims that you can't prove are wrong. And then, so that is how you do avoid the happy death spiral. You do not avoid it by refusing to admire anything too much, conducting a biased search for negative points until you feel unhappy again, or forcibly shoving an idea into a safe box. And I like that he caveated those things.
Yeah.
Because, like, especially, refusing to admire anything too much, there's the sort of unweaving the rainbow where, like, I always was really angry at this idea. Like, if you, analyze something, then it ruins the beauty or whatever. Like, no, it's awesome. It's like, it's even cooler. There's so much more to know about rainbows now that you know what they're made of.
Yeah. He started the post by saying that science actually really is fucking awesome and one of the best things ever. And we're right to admire it because of how much good it has done. Alright, and our last post is Uncritical Supercriticality, which basically starts out with the question of, is atheism a religion? And he reminds us that arguing over the meaning of a word nearly always means that you've lost track of the original question. So what the argument was originally about is why at certain points in human history large groups of people were slaughtered and tortured, ostensibly in the name of an idea. Redefining a word won't change the facts of history one way or the other. So, yeah, basically, is atheism a religion really doesn't matter because people were arguing about what ideas caused other people to slaughter large groups of people, and in the past those were mostly religions, but it doesn't have to be just religions.
Or whatever they were trying to equate religion to meaning. Like, it always seemed to be this sort of gotcha where, you atheists pretend you're so above it all, but you guys are basically a religion too. You've got your beliefs, we've got ours, we're equal.
Right. And then you're arguing over definitions of words again, and then that's stupid, and you should step back.
Insert Stalin, and
Exactly.
then insert Hitler, and it's those were all fun times. Remember that?
I
Then
do.
Harris's book, The End of Faith, had this. He put I think the hardest swing on religion I've ever seen, and emphasized some of the absurdity in the Deuteronomy quote that Yudkowsky pulls out here. I forget the full context of it in the post here, but it was like, here's something that this isn't something that you find in an atheist circle. And the thing is, you wouldn't find this in a religious circle either. So maybe I'll not really today.
I mean, read the quote first, and then we will both tell you why we disagree.
Outside of certain parts of the world, like you wouldn't find this, like, for example, during my arguments with people in high school and college, right? No one there was saying we should kill non-believers. But the idea was that if someone, your daughter, your son, actually didn't say your daughter, it was always your son or whatever. It's
Your
always
son, your
masculine.
brother, yeah.
Tries to secretly seduce you, saying, let us go and serve other gods. You must not listen to him. You must not show him pity. And then, yada, yada, yada. You must kill him.
Yeah.
Immediately take him outside the city and stone him to death. Right?
Yep.
Take him out behind the shed.
Basically.
Yeah. And the reason that we disagree partly is because this following quote, which is also from the same post, where Eliezer says, this was the rule which Stalin set for communism and Hitler for Nazism. Do not debate him or set forth your own evidence. Do not perform replicable experiments or examine history, but turn him in at once to the secret police.
That's actually a really good parallel.
Yes.
Yeah, that was the... We look at the abridged version of an already short post in our notes here, and I kind of forgot the context of it. But yeah, it's perfect. And that is the... If we leave definitions of religion aside, this is the crux of what people have a problem with.
Yes. Yeah. And that is also, like, I have recently claimed that... Not claimed, because I was not the originator of this idea. I have repeated the claim that has been made by several academics now that wokeism is basically a new secular religion. And while they aren't out killing anybody yet, there is very much, a couple steps below that where, like, do not debate with other people that think differently, do not examine evidence, do not perform experiments, simply cast them out of society and try to make sure that they cannot work or live anywhere.
I wouldn't call it a religion I would still say it's an ideology only because they lack the hierarchy and the organization that a religion has.
I don't think all religions necessarily need hierarchy and organization. Maybe they do.
I think they do.
The reason I think of it as a religion is because I think that there are... Boy, we should maybe do a whole podcast episode on this, but in brief, I think that it turns out humans are very different, which is something I did not know when I was younger. I was really surprised by this, and it's a whole revelation that I'm going to have to write a whole thing about. But humans are really different, and like I am pretty much fine without a religion. I don't have those religion needs and hooks in me.
You don't have a God-shaped hole in your heart?
Sadly, no. But it turns out that like a lot of people honestly are just different people, and they have these religious needs and drives and hooks in their being. And when atheism pointed out that religion is fucking stupid and God is a bullshit sky fairy tale, they were left adrift without those needs being fulfilled, and life sucked for them for like a decade. And then wokeism has come in and hooked into all those needs and is fulfilling them. And I think that is why it is akin to a religion, because it meets those needs that religion used to meet, but without a sky daddy.
I feel like that too neatly fills the explanation.
Yeah,
like,
oh,
look,
it's my own little...
Oh, no, I like that, but it's just like, it's also kind of has like that same kind of like, oh, we'll call ourselves brights instead of atheists. Kind of like,
A+.
You know, we don't need religion because we're better than them, but the plebs, they need it, right?
I really think people are different.
There might be something to that.
Now. Yeah, because I felt the same way. I was like, no, you just get rid of religion, we'll all be better off. And I'm like, oh no, this, wow. People are very, very different.
I agree with both of you, where I don't think that there is a God-shaped hole in people's hearts necessarily, or like a religion drive per se, but you do tend to see we are communal animals, and humans get together, they make traditions, and they have superstitions, and they do rituals, and there does seem to just be something human and comforting about that, but it doesn't have to be based on magic and persecution.
I would, if I was going to compare wokeism to religion, I would point out that it deals in sacred truths rather than in questioning one's assumptions and looking for answers, right?
Yeah.
Which is kind of our sacred truth, and I love it.
Well, yeah, it reminds me of the Carl Sagan quote describing science, and he says, the only sacred truth is that there are no sacred truths. But if you're to hold that up as like, aha, you guys have sacred truths too, it's just not really fair.
Yeah.
Like, and I'm not saying that
you care about things too.
Right. Yeah, it's like
the reason, because John McWhorter put this forth in his book, and he points out things like wokeism it's specifically an American phenomenon and an American Protestant phenomenon to fill in the religion gap that was created when new atheism, basically kicked out religion.
Because all-consuming ideologies.
Well, not only is it an all-consuming ideology, but it is specifically to help these Protestants that don't have religion anymore, because it has the same things as Christianity did. It has an original sin. It has redemption through faith rather than works. It has the confessing that you are an irredeemable sinner and throwing yourself upon the mercy.
It kind of has its holy books in the sense that you need to provide receipts.
Yeah. It really mimics Protestant Christianity in many ways, aside from taking out the God aspect, because that was the part that the atheists were like, you're wrong and stupid, and it was wrong and it was stupid, but so a new religion came in that just was like, okay, we'll replace that wrong stupid part and bring back all the other things, and all those other things were still shitty too.
Is the claim that this is a purely American phenomena?
Primarily, yeah.
Definitely have seen this in other
I think it's absolutely going on everywhere.
Yeah, well, yeah.
It's
in different forms, actually, though. Like,
it is very different in other countries. And
this could be a really interesting topic to talk more about, what it looks like, because I remember reading, I don't want to get into it, but I read this really interesting article about what South Korean culture is like.
I read about how wokeism is trying to spread into France and how that is affecting their culture. Yeah.
I just remember hearing like a couple of years ago that someone running for some government seat in South Africa was taken down by some tweet they had said about something or other that was innocuous 10 years ago, but now wasn't. And that sounds like purely this phenomena, but it's
the OG wokeism.
Yeah. But this was years ago in South Africa. Like, this wasn't, and I guess to say mostly an American phenomena doesn't mean it can't be elsewhere, but it seems
maybe an American-led phenomenon.
Maybe. I'm inclined to, like, 90% of bullshit I see online, which is great because I'm barely online anymore. I just assume everybody who is being insane is literally like just a Russian agent to sow disharmony.
Yeah.
And
that probably makes you sleep better at night. I got really upset recently. I was gonna say this when we were talking about why, when Neil Ashbeth went, or like, well, I don't think people are, believe in this stuff anymore. I was on YouTube. It was on something completely unrelated. It was like a psychiatrist talking about working with patients and just completely unrelated to anything. Or actually, no, it's even worse. Somebody wrote this like comment that was this really sad, oh, my dad had this and we struggled for X many years, like wrote this really like heartfelt thing. And someone replied to it and started screaming about how COVID vaccines are a like communist, scam to get us all microchipped, and then something about the second coming. Like it was
sounds like a Russian bot to me.
Like maybe, but like I hope so. Yeah, you know what? I'm gonna headcanon that's what that was. So I'm.
This was YouTube comments.
Yeah.
I mean, this isn't a real place anyway. Then this is purely just for insane people.
But like, what was funny was everybody else in the comments thread was trying to be reasonable and saying, "Can you please explain what you mean by that?" And like, this thing is contradictory. And then the person just kept rambling more stuff that made no sense. And the person kept responding each time that you didn't answer my question.
Right.
But please read my original question. So like, I was glad to see that other people kind of came together to police the comments section. But I felt really bad for the original person who just wrote a nice story about her dad and had this shitstorm follow.
I think YouTube has done something with their algorithm where
they have?
where the comments that are more promoting, reasonableness rather than outrage are the ones that are being shown now. It's
the comment section's so much better. I can actually sometimes read the comments now.
Yeah, it's weird.
I only ever glance at comments if I'm listening to like work music and it's like a 10-hour track of things. I'm like, what song is this? And somewhere in the comments will tell me.
Mm-hmm.
Or if it's like, here's how to replace the spark plugs on your car.
Yeah.
And especially because they took away the you can't see the downvote count.
Mm-hmm.
And fuck me if I'm going to follow a tutorial that had a 50% downvote, right? So I need to skim the comments and be like, does this actually work?
Yeah.
But what am I going to, like, watch a YouTube video on some video game thing and, like, read what other people have to say? No, I'm going to just...
I mean, no, generally not. But it's striking how it feels like a social good to get rid of all the outrage porn and hate-mongering that has been poisoning our society. But then I'm like, that's kind of, again, scary, that giant... masters are controlling what is said and seen.
Outrage porn fills your God-shaped hole.
Damn it, maybe it does. Well, I don't want more of it, but I also don't want censorship, so I'm kind of torn.
Now, the way I think about that is that the really vocal, terrible people tend to be a small, angry minority, and they're just making spaces worse for everyone. This feels more democratic in the sense of, like, other people who might not even want to read the comments or get involved are now posting, and, like... the rest of the comments in that thread were all like really interesting stories about like people's experience with therapy or with like family members with a certain disorder. That was the only thing that, and
maybe if there was
I've been
some
like
sort of
watching videos and reading the comments in them like for a bit there, and that was the first one I ran into that was just like, whoa.
No, that sounds valuable, and you're looking at stuff where people were sharing things worth seeing.
It was like educational, and the people were providing like really interesting commentary as well.
That's really cool.
Maybe if there was an option to take off filters or something. I don't know.
There are YouTube or there are Chrome extensions that you can do to
Go
change
try it,
but not
look at it for 2 seconds and then.
Well, no. There are ones where like it can change all the comments to just say puppies or whatever. But there are also ones where you can filter by keyword.
Yeah, but there's none where you can like remove the algorithm that decided which comments get shown.
No, but like I imagine that you could go in there and just say, look, I don't want to see a comment that has the word COVID or vaccine in it.
Yeah,
like, I'm just sick of that shit. So you block that shit out, and then you get to ignore those things.
That's great, and filtering out shit like that is awesome too. But I like the ability to do the filtering myself, and I dislike the ability to remove the filters other people have imposed.
I like the default.
Yeah, the default is great.
I think it's
actually,
good to give
as
you
long as there was an ability to remove the default, right?
Well, yeah, but I think you can, right? Isn't that what you were just saying?
I would like for there to be that ability. I'm not sure if that would be a net positive to society, but
one of our listeners probably knows if you can do that.
Should we finish this up? Because
yes, where were we?
The next thing we're going to talk about is actually very related, probably. But let's do this. We were saying that these things will supercharge the halo effect, and we want to avoid them. If you feel that contradicting someone who makes a flawed, nice claim in favor of your position, if you feel that would be giving comfort to the enemy, then that's a bad sign. Like, I know we all say there's nothing I hate more than a bad argument for a position I like, or for a position I support. And those should be called out because they're bad arguments. If you feel that, like, even saying something critical about a bad argument for a position you support is a dangerous or bad thing to do, that's a sign that you're in a death spiral.
Do you remember Jeff Foxworthy, like 20 years ago, had a sketch that was always like, if whatever, you've got a set of back row truck seats in your lawn, you might be a redneck. You could do a list of these for, like, you might be in a happy death spiral.
Yeah.
If you're afraid to call out any problems with a position that you and your friends agree with, you might be in an affective death spiral.
If you feel like you get some sort of spiritual credit for each nice thing you say about your position, about your great idea,
you might be in an affective death spiral or happy death spiral.
If you have the distinct sense that the other people in the room will dislike you for not supporting our troops, if you argue against the latest war,
you might be in an affective death spiral.
And if saying anything about the great idea gets you stoned to death or shot,
you might be stoned to death or shot.
You might just be dead, I think.
Yeah.
Hence the death spiral.
Yeah.
Then the affective death spiral has gone super critical. It is now a super happy death spiral.
Yes.
Dun dun dun.
Yeah, he's saying religion isn't special enough as a class of mistakes to be the key problem. The key problem is super happy affective death spirals. And they turn much deadlier when criticism becomes a sin, or a gaffe, or a crime.
Yeah. This makes me think of positive psychology, or, like, sort of toxic positivity, actually. I think that can be really invalidating, and it's hard to be in an environment when you're around a lot of people that sort of are like, turn that frown upside down, you know, like, basically where you're being shamed for having negative emotions ever, or worries, you know?
Yeah. Anytime you're shamed for offering a criticism.
And that's not a religion, it's just, like, another class of mistake.
Yeah, and he points out that, like, you know, one of the reasons it should be okay to argue against arguments, I guess, is that the vast majority of possible beliefs in a non-trivial answer space are false. Likewise, the vast majority of possible supporting arguments for a true belief are also false. So, yeah, a lot of them are just going to be false, even if the belief is true, because the supporting argument is bad. He ends on this note, which I have never forgotten and is one of the most seared into my brain. I love it a lot. Who wants to read it?
I think you get to.
Yeah, you're the one that loves it.
Okay. All right. He ends with, and it is triple ultra forbidden to respond to criticism with violence. There are a very few injunctions in the human art of rationality that have no ifs, ands, buts, or escape clauses. This is one of them. Bad argument gets counter-argument. Does not get bullet. Never, never, ever, never, forever.
Don't do it.
And I'm glad we haven't gotten to that point yet, but I hope we never do.
That was my thought too, where I think except for the actually just sort of hilarious protest at that one CFIRE reunion, like, I can't think of any, like, we as a community, I guess, are still quite small, but we haven't had any, like, terrorist attacks or shooters or, you know, people getting in a knife fight about Newcomb's box, right?
Well, I meant just, like, in the society we live in here in America, because, like, up in Canada, they're getting kind of close.
In rationality?
No.
I was
the
talking
government.
about, like, our
they pulled back,
here.
which is great, but yeah, no, the government got very close to the point of just making it illegal to say things to counter the government.
Okay, yeah, so...
Anyways,
Yep.
For next time, we are reading boy, this is an interesting name. The LessWrong posts fake utility functions and fake utility functions. So I guess we've got to read about fake ones before we can read about fake ones.
Not to be confused with real utility functions.
It's definitely not. That would be terrible.